All right, on to the story making international headlines now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued a video message addressing the people of Iran, saying that his country stands with them. He's accused Iran's rulers of plunging their country deeper into darkness and onto the brink of war through their backing of Hezbollah and Hamas. He says Israeli armed forces must protect their people in northern Israel from the attacks of Hezbollah. Let's try and make sense of all of this. Bring in our guest. Thembisa Fakude is a senior research fellow and director at Africa-Asia Dialogues and joins us via our video link this morning. Great to have you on the program as always, sir. Welcome to the SABC News channel. So Israel is describing their ground operation as limited, localized and targeted. Despite that, though, I'm sure the rest of the world is seeing this as a major development.
Yeah, well, if they're going to go ahead with it, I doubt if they'll go ahead with it. I think it's a psychological warfare at the moment to Hezbollah. Israel has done this before, or tried to do this before in the past in Beirut, and the outcome in terms of the body counts of the Israeli soldiers from Beirut was high, and it had a negative political opinion inside the country. So I doubt if Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant will go ahead doing it, but I think the psychological warfare is already taking effect. Hezbollah is readying itself for whatever it is that's going to happen. But unfortunately, of course, there's a lot of internal displacement of people at the moment who are moving to Syria and into the hinterland of Lebanon from southern part of Lebanon.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this is more psychological warfare than anything else, well, at least at this stage, because my next question to you was going to be what the end game is going to be for Israel here, at least from your vantage point, in a context where, of course, there's still ongoing war being waged against Hamas in Gaza. And, of course, sentiment, at least from my vantage point, seems to be changing around how the world is viewing Israel's assaults on both these regions.
Israel policy at the moment is you escalate to de-escalate, whatever that means. But we've seen them attacking relentlessly the southern part of Lebanon, particularly the southern suburbs of Beirut, where Hezbollah is largely concentrated. It has not stopped attacking Hamas in Gaza, and in the West Bank it continues to do so. So what they're currently doing at the moment is escalating with the intention of de-escalating. In other words, pushing the enemy to the corner where they will negotiate because they will be under pressure. But this is likely, of course, to backlash for Israel because the level of anger in the Middle East at the moment, it will take a very, very long time, I'll argue decades, to have the current mood on the streets of different countries in the Middle East, accepting the Israeli rapprochement, as we've seen what Benjamin Netanyahu has done today with that recorded video message to the people of Iran. He did the same to the people of Lebanon, saying that Lebanese were not the enemy of Israel, but Hezbollah was the enemy of Israel. So whatever it is they'll try and do, it will take a very, very long time to actually land into more acceptable years in the region. But what we're likely to see, because Hezbollah is in a corner, you're likely to see Hezbollah retaliating. How they're going to do that, including Iran, by the way. How they're going to do that, we'll have to wait and see.
Sure. All of this, of course, is happening after the major development at the weekend, the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. We had all kind of waited to see what happens next, and it doesn't seem there's been any kind of major assault from Hezbollah itself, even though the group did promise that there would be some kind of retaliation.
I think they're planning, certainly Hezbollah has been working with the killing of Hassan Nasrallah on Friday. But we haven't seen any response. Yesterday, Israel reported that there were 70 rockets coming from Lebanon into Israel. But I think we have to continue waiting and expecting some major retaliation from both Hezbollah and Iran. You must remember that last month, a couple of months ago, weeks ago, Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, was killed in Tehran, and the Iranians vowed to retaliate. The killing of Hassan Nasrallah comes in a backdrop of a dozen at least of assassination of Hezbollah leaders, including some of the senior officials from Iran in Syria and in Lebanon. So there's certainly going to be a retaliation. How and when is that going to happen? We'll have to we have to wait. But I think the Israelis are preparing themselves, and notwithstanding what Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying about returning the internally displaced Israelis to the northern border, I don't think they'll be moving back because many of them are still expecting a retaliation from Iran and Hezbollah.
Sure. Is a full-on war in the Middle East, at least as far as you're concerned, a far-gone conclusion then?
No, it's not a far-gone conclusion. We've got a number of countries, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Jordan, Egypt, that have normalized relations with Israel. So we are likely to have a full blown-out war with those normalization taking place. Saudi Arabia was about to normalize relations. We don't know what's going to happen, but they haven't written that off, that they might normalize relations with Israel. So you have at least Iran and other countries, few of them, that are still at loggerheads with Israel. So because of that, I'm of the view that there's not going to be a full-out war. Countries like Qatar, Egypt are not going to be joining that war. Turkey is not going to be joining that war. Jordan is not going to be joining that war. So it's very few countries, Syria perhaps, Lebanon, and Iran. And Iran is very far away on the other side of the Gulf to join this war. So I don't see a full-blown war in the region.
Those countries you've mentioned, though, I imagine, still do have a role, however, to taper down whatever tensions exist in that region, especially if they're hoping to make sure that, of course, there's a semblance of stability that prevails there.
Indeed, particularly countries such as Qatar, countries such as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, these are very big countries within the region, and they will a serious influence. So if they are in a position to continue negotiating, I don't see them joining the war nor encouraging an escalation of any sort. So you are likely to see them being foot soldiers in terms of promoting ceasefire and pushing for stability within the region. So you have three countries, mainly led by Iran, that would like to see an escalation in terms of revenge. But as long as you have countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, and the big countries in the region pushing for a ceasefire, I don't see a full-blown out war within the region.
Right, that's a sober take, I suppose. The backdrop against all of this, of course, is that, South Africa has headed to the ICJ multiple times asking for some kind of intervention, at least insofar as the war with Gaza is concerned. And we've certainly kind of waited to see whether any of those rulings will have a material impact on the ground, for lack of a better term. And so far, it doesn't seem so, with questions now being raised about the effectiveness of the institution itself in a context where it doesn't seem to shift the dial, no matter how strongly worded those rulings are.
Well, it's symbolism, and it's certainly going to shift the dial and have an impact on Israeli politics in future, both for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant and their government, and Israel proper. So we might not see the effectiveness of it now, but this is a stain that will likely last for a lifetime for Israel. If the ICC and the ICJ, because you must know that the two Israeli politicians, Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, his defense minister, are also indicted. And once those charges are formalized, they are also going to be known as criminals or war criminals like Vladimir Putin is. And that is certainly going to impact. And it's got a very, very serious global political impact. And if the ICJ, whenever they sit, because we all know that it's a very long process, but as long as they continue to sit, that will make news. And Israel will always be on the back foot as long as this case is on. So I wouldn't agree with those who say that it didn't move the dial, nor was not impactful or effective. I think time will prove that what South Africa did was correct, and it's certainly going to impact on Israel's future outlook.
Sure. Optimistic. The question, I suppose, is how much time do the people of Gaza and Lebanon feel they have? But let me ask you this question. The United Nations has just wrapped up its 78th General Assembly meeting. We heard Benjamin Netanyahu also addressing that gathering there. Really no holds barred address, if you ask me, doubling down in many instances with that refrain around self-protection ongoing. The question I've always had is whether or not multilateralism is delivering on its promises, quite frankly, because we've seen so many other world leaders take to that platform to admonish Israel, and so Israel straight after that almost completely pushed back. But
at the same time, we had that mass walking out of people. We had leader after leader of various nations condemning what Israel is doing in Gaza. This has got an impact. Israel would like to be seen as a democratic country that's operating within the rule of law and international law, but we know now that they're not. And whenever they appear on these multilateral platforms, they continue to be embarrassed and exposed. And that's the whole point. Whether that, of course, is going to put them under pressure to change their policies in Gaza, West Bank, and Lebanon, we'll have to wait and see. But the impact that this has had on Israel is going to be long lasting. And this is the kind of course, that has invested a lot in PR, advertising, etc. To kind of spend billions of rands trying to portray themselves as democratic and destinations of choice for tourists, for example. But Israel, I doubt if it will survive this. It will take them a very long time to have Israel normalize in international platforms and multilateral bodies and other platforms that are important in terms of promoting the image of countries. And Israel has suffered a setback in this regard, and it will take them a very long time to recover.
All right, Thembisa Fakude, thanks very much indeed for your insights. Interesting as always. Thembisa is a senior research fellow, and director at Africa-Asia Dialogues. We appreciate your time. All right, we'll certainly keep watching the situation in the Middle East as it continues to unfold, of course. Those latest updates here on the SABC News Channel.